Hola chamas y chamos, welcome back to another episode of Álvaro Dev Labs. Wait a second, it seems like WhatsApp came back to life again. In today's episode we're gonna check how to easily create forms in Vue 3, especially dynamic forms, which will be generated based on a JavaScript object. At least one time in our career as a front-end developer, we will need to implement some kind of form. It could be a login form for users to authenticate. It could be a registration to create a user. So why not make this work easy for developers? To better illustrate the value of using dynamic forms, let's just check how we normally implement forms in Vue and HTML. So we probably are going to start like creating the form tag here. And inside of it, we're going to create a form group that will contain the label plus an input. So the label, we are gonna use it for username. Here we're gonna put username, and the input of type text, let's just add a class username, class of form control, and a name username. Okay. So we can continue creating new ones like this. Let's create a password. So we copy and paste and we change a few stuff here. And we have this small form, right? This is okay for like really simple examples like this one, but imagine that you have this data hard coded here and your client needs to add more inputs into the form, or it needs to conditionally show some of them depending on some conditions, right? So things can get complicated and populate this template HTML with a lot of ifs and so on. So the value of using dynamic form is, imagine that you can fetch all the data, the info for that form in a JSON file or Markdown file, and automatically generate the inputs that you need with the format that is necessary. Also imagine these large forms that sometimes, even if it's not the best UX approach, we will need to implement them because you'll need a lot of data from the user, especially in billing forms and so on. So yeah, there are several ways of like improving the UX, like creating groups, but imagine that you have to code each one of these ones. So the idea with the dynamic form is that you can easily create an object and it will automatically create all of these. How we're going to build a dynamic form? As any other video, I'm going to create a new repository based on my vitesome. Vitesome is a repo template in GitHub that I create to easily start any project with the configurations and plugins that I would like. It's an opinionated Vue 3 starter template with Vite. It has anything you will need, like Tailwind. In this case, I'm using Windows CSS. Components out-importing, 18 and out of the box, internationalization, icons, and a lot of more stuff. I'm going to do Vue dynamic forms example. I'm not going to put anything under description, and I'm just going to create it on public. Once it's created, we can go into code. I'm just gonna git clone this. So git clone. And I'm going to open it in VS Code. So Vue dynamic forms example. Let's say yes here. Create later. Since the node modules are already installed, I'm going to open this. Let's go to localhost. And here we have it. Okay. To make things even easier, I already created a library called vue-dynamic-forms. This library allows you to create the forms dynamically, as we were explaining in the last section, based on a variant business object model. So is this one right here. It's already in the 3 version, so that means that it goes along with the Vue 3 releases. Well, here is a little bit of the summary itself, but we are gonna focus on how to install it in this moment. So in this case, I'm using Yarn, so I'm just going to copy and paste this in the terminal here. Let's open it a little bit of it and create another window for another terminal. So Yarn add as igloo vue-dynamic-forms. Once it's already installed, let's follow it here, and you can use it as a Vue 3 plugin. To install it like that, we are going to import from the as igloo vue-dynamic-forms create dynamic forms function, and with that we are going to pass it to the app.use. So let's go here in our vitesome template, and let's find the main TS here, and somewhere just below the vue18n, let's grab that as igloo vue-dynamic-forms, create dynamic forms function, and this one we're gonna put it down until here, even further down to maintain some order. And as well as we use it, the internationalization and the router, we're just going to create another app.use, and we're gonna pass the vue-dynamic-form right here. So that's enough to install the plugin itself. How we're going to use it. To start fresh, what I did is clean up this index.vue and remove everything that comes with the vitesome template right away. And we're going to start creating our forms. So to do that, the vue-dynamic-form library has several components. The most important one is the dynamic form component, like this. And it has property called form. Okay? Inside of the setup function on our component, let's create a variable with reactive called form. So we're gonna pass something here, and as an ID of the form, we're gonna pass example ID. Okay. Another thing that we need to pass in this object is fields. So fields is just an object containing all of the different fields that we want to render into our form. In this case, the property names are the names for each one of the inputs. So we're going to create username, and we open an object. Let me just import here reactive from here. You could create your field like this and just pass like label and so on, but to make things easier, I create some factory functions that also help with the typing. So text field is one of them. You can import it from the library, so text field from not material, but as igloo vue-dynamic-forms. Okay. Here we can pass several properties, but one of them is the username, so we're gonna put it right away. And we can also pass a value just to represent it. We also need to pass form in the return value here, so it's available on the template, and if we tap save and go to the browser, you can see there is already rendering something. Yeah, it looks bad. Why? Because by default it's on style. Vue-dynamic-form is a style agnostic library, so you can use the styles that you want. It doesn't have anything predefined, unless you manually import the themes that are available in the library. In this case, you can see here that it does generate the label and the input, but it comes with several classes that you can then modify as you want. Like you can add the styles as you prefer. But if you're lazy like me and you want to start right away, you can import one of the themes that are available. So here in base CSS, we are just going to import the default theme that is available under this directory. If we click save and we go back to the browser, you can see that I already applied some styles, especially for the input to have a proper border and so on. Sorry, there is a dog in the neighborhood that goes crazy every time that I need to record a video. Before continuing with this tutorial, I wanted to jump to the documentation and show you every field that is available by default in the library. We have the text field, which we were using just some seconds ago. We had the email, password, URL, number, checkbox, radio button, select, and text area. Scrolling down a little bit, you will find an example of each one of them. We have text field here, and you can type whatever you want in the input, that you will have the v model value attached here in this little console. Also, you will have attached a piece of code, in this case is using the option API for this specific example. Then you have email for here, so it has a validation. If I don't put the name, the email correctly, it will trigger a validation. We will talk about validation just in a minute. So now let's add some more fields to our login form. In this case, we're gonna take the password, probably the email, and some checkbox to check the terms and conditions. So let's get back to the code, and here we are going to import the email field, the password field, and the checkbox field. So the next one here, let's create the email. So email is going to be an email field of label email, then a password field with password, and let's see if it creates it automatically. Well, it says remember. Okay, that's fine by me. We could also do like a condition, another checkbox. I agree with terms and conditions. Wow, I'm really surprised how GitHub Copilot reads the code and just recommend you exactly what you need. So you can see it's pretty easy to fill the forms that you need. If I click save right now, bam, you have your login form already created. So that's powerful, that's really useful. If we fill this right now, you will see that, okay, it looks like a login form, but it's not validating, for example, the email. Yeah, okay, I'm inputting whatever input I want, also the password, and it's not actually validating anything. So the next step is adding validation to our form. How do we add validation? If we go again to the documentation, let's take the email one. Here, in each one of the fields, you will have a property called validation. There is an array of different validators. Validator is the same as like a password field. It's a factory function that allows you to create a validator right away. There are several kinds of validators. There is a pattern one. I can go here in validation and show you a little bit better. So there is required, min, max, email, min length, max length, and pattern. So for email, we would like to know first that is required, and second that the format of the email is correct. So I'm just going to copy and paste this here. So I'm just going to copy and paste this part here and put it on the email. We will need to import the new factory functions that we're using from the library itself. So validator and also required and email. This is like default pre-built regex validators. So you pass the validator function and it will check how is it built. So let's save this one. We can also pick one for the pattern. So password, this is a perfect example. So here, instead of having a predefined one, you can create your own with pattern. Pattern is a function that you will pass a regex with a certain structure, and then whatever text that is in the input, it will test it against this and tell you if it's matched or not. So let's take this array and we are gonna put it on the password. So we need to import pattern also here. And let's see. So you will notice that now we put the email as required. So every time you put something as required, a little bit of start will put in the label. Right now I made a focus blur event, so because it's empty and it's checking if it's required, then it will tell you, hey, please, this field is required, fill it. So let's fill it with something. I'm going to put Alvaro, and it will tell you like the format of the email is incorrect because it's missing the rest of it. If I put a normal email like this one, then it will work. Password, right? So we put a password here that if we check the regex, what is going to test is if the password contains at least one uppercase, one lowercase, one number, and one special character. Minimum 8 characters and maximum 10. So we start typing. It's not validating yet. If we blur, it will validate and tell you, hey, this is not the correct password. So I will add a correct one and then bam, all good. We have these checkboxes here, but they don't have any validation whatsoever. So the next step is going to be adding a submit button. So the next step is how we're going to listen to the change of the form and what to do with the data. We can submit the data or we can listen on change. What should we do with this data? So there are two ways of handling the data of the form. We can listen to the submit event, or we can listen to a change event on any of the fields of the form and do something with it. So for that, if we go to the documentation, you will check a part that says submitting the form here in usage form composition. So this is like the recommended way of using it. What we're going to put here down is a button of type submit with the form ID. This will trigger the form submit event. So just below here, we add the button and we add the events form submitted and error in case that any error happened, like validation errors or whatsoever. Let's just add a little bit of classes here. So background could be teal, 400, text light, a little padding, maybe this, rounded, font bold, okay. So it's complaining because we didn't create these functions. So I'm just going to remove it really quick just to show the button.
Denied.
Illegal use. Why is complaining? Oh, of course. It's missing the button here. I don't know why it was already. Okay, so we had the submit button, really ugly. Let me just text a sum, and this could be a little bit larger, especially the px one. So px could be 1.5 and py. Let's try with these values. Okay, a little bit better. Maybe access. Nope, I'm not happy yet. 1, so maybe 2 here. Okay, that looks better. So let's open the console here. What we were going to do is we are going to click this and listen to the event in the console. So for doing that, we are going to use an event here called submitted. Submitted on form submit. And just below here in the setup function, we're gonna create on form submit. And yeah, we're going to use the console log, but we are going to pass the values that the method returns. So let's go here, and if we add a little bit of data, remember me, yeah, submit. So values is not defined. Of course, it's not defined. I'll check again. So here you will have object with all the fields that were filled, like condition, email, and username. You will notice that the password is not there because we actually didn't fill it and it was empty. So that's one way of doing it. This is like the normal submission flow. Then you can do an Axios call and send it to a backend. One important thing to mention is that if you have a validation error, you will not have this event trigger. Instead of that, you will have an error event. So let's add it just to check how it works. So we are going to create another function called process errors, which will be something like this, but here instead of form errors, we are passing the value. Let's return this to our template, and let's check what happens if we do an error on the login. So here, let's just fill the password incorrectly. Also, we are not going to fill the email, and if I check submit, it will basically what it will do is it will force a validation in the fields that weren't blurred, and also it will give you a form error here, and it will tell you, okay, for each one of them, not required here, this field is required, value true. So it will give you like the error object with each one of the validation that failed. In this case, email and password, and the type of validation that failed in case you want to show more information. So this is the one that I recommend the most. There is also another way to doing it. You can listen to the change on the form. So let's get back here, and instead of listen to submission, let's delete the functions here, and just below the form, let's create a reactive object called form values containing the values that we're gonna pass that to our template, and below the button, let's create, I don't know, like a pre-code like this with form values, just to debug. Let's remove also the button. I'm just gonna comment it, and to listen to changes you only need to put here if my keyword allows me, change on form change, and somewhere here function on, my dyslexia is all over the place today. So function on form change, we're gonna pass the values, And we are going to object assign our reactive object, which is form values with values. We're gonna pass this to our template and let's check what happens. So right now it's empty, and if I enter something here, you will see that the object gets updated. If we go to the view dev tools, oh, there is something new. Okay, nice. We can go to the timeline of events here. Okay. And let's just put something here. So this is keyword events and component events. So here is triggered a change event. Okay, let's just grab this a little bit so you can see more data. So the dynamic form is triggering a change event, and this change event is containing the values of the form that were filled. So this method doesn't care about validation. It will give you the values per se, so if you're using it, you will need to validate yourself outside of the form. And that's pretty much it for today. You can see how easy it is to create forms with this library. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if it was helpful for you, please let me know in the comments and drop a like. It means a lot for me. Also, you can hit the subscribe button to get more videos like this every 2 weeks. For all the resources that were appearing in this video, such as vitesome and the library itself, vue-dynamic-forms, I will paste it in the description below, all the links for the repositories. Thank you all for the support and see you next time. Bye!